For this panel, we're going to talk about how to successfully scale your game through community engagement. So for this, I'd like to invite no less than 5 speakers to the stage. So that will be Margaret McClure from Netflix Games, Carolyn Wang from ForeVR Games, Michael Silverwood from Pixile Studios, Sam Fisher from Hippo, and Jatin Gera from Moengage. So please. Thank you all so much for joining. For a moment, I thought you were going to leave me alone up here. So, all right. Well, let's dive straight into it. And I thought it would be a good idea if you could all introduce yourselves. So let's start over here on this side. Carolyn.
Hi. I am Carolyn Wang. I am a marketing manager at ForeVR Games. We are a VR game company that makes casual arcade games for the Oculus Quest and Oculus Quest 2. We have 2 titles right now, ForeVR Bowl and ForeVR Darts. And previously, my background is in community management. I worked at Eastside Games on titles like RuPaul's Drag Race Superstar and The Office from How We Manage.
Okay. And I do believe we have actually some footage from some of your games. Sorry, I need to, it's not exactly all in the right order, so I need to, this is not it? Okay. You know, it's just the last session of the day. It's one of those things.
Rated ET.
Yeah. There you go. Go ahead. Building up the tension here.
Boom, 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 boom.
All right.
Rated E10 for ages 10 and up.
It's the wrong one. Yeah. This is from Michael. Okay.
This is okay?
Well, you know, just trying to shake things up here, of course. We'll get back to the content from ForeVR later. But Michael, since we now landed onto you, can you tell something about yourself and your studio?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Michael. I'm the co-founder of Pixile. We make Super Animal Royale. It's a top-down 2D shooter. And we launched it 4 years ago in early access, and just last year left early access, and now it's on crossplay on all the major consoles and PC.
All right, thanks. Let's continue on to, yeah, exactly. I'm going to risk it. Continue on to Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret McClure. I'm an executive producer at Netflix Games. I've been there for about 7 months. I work on the external development side, so that means working with all these wonderful types of developers on, signing amazing mobile games to our platform. Before that, I briefly worked at Meta or Facebook, working on VR games, whatever you want to call it. And then before that, I spent about 8 years working at Riot Games as a lead producer on Valorant and Teamfight Tactics, and a producer on League of Legends.
Okay.
I do have a video, though.
We do have some footage. Bears.
No.
Big one.
Now, before we head over to Sam, just one more try and get in the forever. Yeah, there we are. All right, so that was from Carolyn's studio. Now, kindly give the stage to Sam. Talk about Hyper Hippo.
Thank you very much. I'm Sam Fisher.
Rated D10 for ages 10 and up.
No.
I can talk to under 10-year-olds too. I'm okay that way. I'm fine. Great to be here. I'm from Western Canada. I'm the CEO of Hyper Hippo Entertainment. We have a couple titles here. We are thrilled to be a launch partner with Netflix when we started together with Netflix. We think there's huge opportunity, especially on the global side of things, of what can happen there. So thank you. It's great to be here with you. Two of our titles, Adventure Capitalist, Adventure Communist, two of the top 5 games in the idle genre. They've been around for a while. Our studio has been around for about 10 years. And in our different games, I think we've had about 100 million just coming up on 100 million players in our different games. So it's just great to be here and talk about community, which is, in my view, what it's all about.
Absolutely. And then the last one.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jatin. I do not have the fancy AVs. We do have, a little bit.
I just took a screenshot of
Thank you so much for doing that. So Moengage, I head strategy for a company called Moengage. Moengage is a marketing, personalization, customer retention platform. We work with a lot of giving companies, brands like IMVU, 18 Birdies, Junts.io, and help them with their onboarding and retention use cases. Good to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, so most of the questions I'm going to ask the panel are your respective communities. So Jatin, maybe you can answer for your clients and what most audience you work with.
Sure. So I was put on this panel to give the outsider view, not from the industry at all. We mostly work with B2B. So for us, the customers are B2B gaming companies, game developers, etc. For us, community is, so we have something called a customer advisory board. So essentially that's a board which is, of people who are actually using our software. We kind of made it, for the lack of a better word, more sexy over the years, right? And we give them insider access to, the new features that we are developing in the product, insider access, make them mini celebrities within our organization. So for me, probably a good starting point. That's what community is.
Awesome. I like that point of view, the mini superstars. So a bit of a question for the rest of the panel also, how do you describe your community, who are they, and what profile do they fit? Do you want to start, Carolyn?
Yeah, for sure. So funnily enough, at ForeVR Games, we have narrowed down our community profiles into about 3 distinct archetypes. Probably about 95% of our players fall into one of these 3. They are named after some of our community champions who are really active in our Discord servers and serve as some of our beta testers for upcoming titles. So we have the first one, we call him Autodidactic after one of our players. He is the core gamer that you imagine when you think a gamer. So the profile is typically 20-something to 30-something-year-old man who cares only about the gameplay and doesn't really care about the community building aspect. We have the player called Angel Fires, who's named after one of our players as well. And this person is a community champion. This is the kind of person who loves being on Discord all the time, making new friends on the games, and talking with people, and just jumping into games with newbies and helping them out. And then we have a third player profile called Logan. He's not named after one of our players. He's named after the son of our VP of Engineering because he's a 15-year-old boy. And this user profile is of a kid who likes to meme around with his friends, kind of jump around, do, dank memes, as you do. He likes to troll. He likes to do stupid things. He likes to push the boundaries of what you can do in the game. So those are our main profiles that we try to cater towards and think of when we're building our games.
Awesome. Can you follow that?
Yeah, we don't have a great we don't have profiles on our players, but we did do a survey at one point to get a sense of who is playing, and our goal with designing the game was to make Battle Royale a lot more accessible, and then we also have modes outside of Battle Royale. So we actually we found that there was actually a lot more players who had never played a Battle Royale before than the typical Battle Royale player. So there was a little over 20% that had played other Battle Royales like Fortnite or PUBG. But the biggest categories, surprisingly, were like Minecraft players, Pokemon players, Zelda players. So for a lot of people, it was their first Battle Royale. Maybe don't typically play as many competitive games, but kind of opening up competitive games to kind of a friendlier, more casual audience that's not quite as hyper-competitive.
Yeah, so Netflix Games obviously is very new, and right now we're very focused on learning about who our community is and who really engages. Obviously, for us, you need the subscription to Netflix, but that does lead us to 220 million plus people. Not all of them are necessarily going to become gamers, though we can hope. But we do get a wider variety of people who do try out our games. So it can be people, they would never say that they've played a game. When we talk to them, they're like, this is sort of my first game type of thing. And all the way down to people who are like, I spend the majority of my free time playing games and trying to master games. When we think about them in terms of the community, who are they and what are they looking for, we don't necessarily think about them in terms of the demographics or the point of view, but actually what is our motivation? Why do they play the game? Is it coming from a place of, mastering a skill? Is it coming from the need to get, 100% something, collect all the things? Or is it, a nurturing point of view? They want to nurture and have fun things, see things grow. So we really think about them much more around the motivation because, demographics and things like that can actually we find lead us astray often, where we get into a scenario where we think about X thing, and that is great, but that puts us in the past and not in the future-looking point of view.
We're often surprised as who our community is. We don't necessarily think that we design a game or build a game for a specific audience. This is the audience, and let's go build for it. We usually build a game, and then we find out there's an audience for it. And so that leads to some surprises. I think the demographics can be all over. I think even people who are in the same demographics can still be very diverse and have very different perspectives, so it's very interesting to be that way. Our goal at this point is really to deepen the engagement. It's not as much how can we make as many players as possible, it's how can we get more engagement with the community that we have, because we find a lot of joy in that. And so building out engagement is a big part of what we're doing. It's interesting to see how some of the things are doing. As far as demographics, so there is one thing that I think that is kind of interesting for us, and this is just something we've been digging in more recently, is that just understanding Gen Alphas. It's interesting from a community perspective. We're blown away as to what the size of that market is, and I can't even say that market. Take that word out of the transcript. Just this new generation that's coming is going to change a lot of things. They've gone through COVID. They've been in a digital-first environment their entire lives. They're about to come out onto the scene. They're the largest generation in the history of this planet. And what is that going to do to the gaming world? We better start thinking about that now. So it's just something that has been an interesting thing for us to be thinking about. But as far as the community, who the community is, we're learning that all the time. But can we build our engagement together with them and let the community build up the culture of what we're doing?
Yes. Just to stay with you for a little bit, Sam. So Hyper Hippo has been around for 10 years now, and you've had all these different you started with a big success and then brought out some following games. Did you really build the community mostly around the studio or about the separate games?
Did we build it around the studio or the separate games? I think what we're trying to do. When we started on early in the studio, we were about 10 years ago, we were about 15 people. And I think 2 or 3 of those people were in the community management side of things. And people would say, wow, why do you have people over here talking to players? And it's kind of like, I was like blown away from the aspect of, well, why would you not have people over here talking to players? This is kind of what we're all here about. And so we really found that the fan base was there. It was around the game. The second game really didn't come out probably until 3 or 4 years later, so I guess it was really kind of based around the game to start with. But what we're trying to be better at is how can we create a community more for the studio. I guess it would be sort of a way, not more for the brand. I hope that we see that brand come together, like you'll see more of an iconic feel as we build going forward. You see this, you'll know that it's a Hyper Hippo game. That's what we're kind of looking for. So if that kind of tells you that we're kind of building towards that brand feel, I'm not even going to put the studio on it. I'm going to say it's the brand because I think the community has a big impact on driving where that goes.
Yeah, definitely. And you have some panelists, trying to build around a game or a brand. Then like for example, Michael, you have like a very sort of, I think, a very specific audience that goes after your game. But do you have the feeling to go really more for the gameplay, or do you really follow what the studio is doing as well?
I think for us it's been very bottom up and natural, where we came up with like a world and wrote a backstory, came up with characters, and then we just started getting a few players and then sort of built around that. So we were just looking at naturally what is the community doing, weaving that into what we're doing, and just ground up building from that. And since Super Animal Royale is really our only game, it is kind of all around that game, but the game extends into like the Discord community and Twitter and all the social media platforms. So it's kind of the characters and the world and everyone enjoying those and experiencing those, and then across all the different platforms.
I was just going to say that that's very similar to how, when I worked at Riot, it was very much the same place. Like, the game and the studio, when you have one title, are very intermingled. You build fans around like the League of Legends fans versus Riot Games fans, but over time, as you go into multi-titles and you work towards multi-titles, you do start working towards building that around the brand of like Riot Games. So there's a big effort during my time at Riot where we had to make that shift from being just League of Legends fans to people understanding if we make a Riot game, this is what you could expect, this is what you should expect from us, and what we'll try to uphold, and also what we won't do. So I think that's like a very natural place to start and an eventual place to grow to. So that's exactly what we did on Riot and on League as well.
I feel like Supercell is a studio that does that really well in building that kind of fandom around their brand. And as a studio, like they originally were just like the Clash of Clans studio, but I think that they did a really good job with Clash Royale and Brawl Stars in expanding that to being like their whole universe. And now you have like a captive audience of their really invested core players who are hotly anticipating every single new release of Supercells. I think that they are a team that does community management really well and builds that relationship super well.
Absolutely. So I also wanted to dive a little bit more into questions about sort of the, let's call it the technical side of community management. Like, for example, when you look at different time zones and different cultures, different languages, is that also something that any of you cater towards, or you're really looking into? So anyone who wants to pick that up?
I can go with that time. I run a fairly diverse team and a set of customers that we cater to. One of the very important things that you kind of need to find that healthy mix of where your audience is or where your customers are in our case, and then basis that you kind of take that call. So for example, in the DACH belt, I actually learned this term a little while ago, which is the German speaking Europe, which is Deutschland, Austria, and Switzerland. Had probably contributed about 6% of our overall revenue and 18% of our overall clients. So it was for us to create a sub-community within that community. It was very important for us. So local, wherever the customers are, wherever the users are in a game's case, that's where you should be.
I think it's really good for us as we're a Canadian studio. And I think for a Canadian studio, it's interesting because, I think 1% of our game audience is Canadian, so we're always exporting. Like everything is going out, right? And so we have to think about it in terms of how do we go out to the world. And so when we go out to the world, I would say in this first 10 years we've learned a little bit about how to do some of the Western markets. So it's not something that you learn in a day or two. It takes a little while. So I'd say that we're learning sort of how to do that area well. I'd say the next 10 years we really are working, our very specific focus is how we're going to be taking community engagement on a more global basis. And boy, that's a hairy dog. I mean, just the things that become, every day you're going to find an issue that you never dreamt was possible about what it is, whether it goes from compliance all the way through to language, to the customs. You've offended somebody in some way that you never expected you were going to do. And it's such a challenge. And but I would encourage, particularly if I'm here and we're talking to Canadians or we're talking to others, is that that's where our growth is. That's where we have to go to, and we have to go out into those type of markets. And if you think that you can do that just by being, like, just to give an example, we had an ad on Adventure Communist. We had it translated into 8 different languages. And I was really excited about that because we had it out in 8 different languages, only to find that I was extremely embarrassed to find out how poorly we had translated it and how poorly we were communicating with our players in these foreign countries by using Google Translate to kind of do their player support. And so, yeah, there's nothing like embarrassment sometimes to motivate you to do something a little bit better. And so we've done a lot of work, and we've done some great work together with our friends here that has totally taken us to a new type of level. Very, very grateful for that. But it's a lot of hard work, but that's where the growth is. And so that needs to happen. A studio, whatever stage you're at, you should be looking at that, how you're going to do that. Maybe not all in-house, but you have to figure out how you're going to do that.
Yeah, right on. Right. And I've already heard like a couple of people talking about Discord, for example, and I'm also wondering, like, for your audiences, what are sort of the favorite platforms or like the best ways to engage with them and reach out?
I'll take a pass at this and let everyone else be smarter than me. I think it really depends, at least from my experience, on what you're engaging with them on and in what the size and scope of that is. Like for Valorant, for example, when we were launching that and we were in a smaller environment, we had about 5,000 people in a Discord channel. That was feasible for us to actually like somewhat be engaged and have the devs in there and have those conversations. You know, when you get to like 5 million in a Discord channel, not quite as feasible. It becomes more of like a Twitch chat experience, which can be a little traumatizing. So I think it really depends on like the depth of conversation you want to be having and how much you need to have that one-on-one setting, and like, you know, if you're solving a problem or actually you need to dig into what they're talking about, and also then therefore the size. So I think it's more of a tool for the goal you're aiming towards versus, you know, necessarily a platform preference. I think also it depends on what community you're tapping into. So, for example, for Valorant, you know, that we're tapping into like the CSGO players of the world, the PUBG players of the world, you know, the Overwatch players of the world. They have ways they talk and communicate and are already have a community around it. We need to meet them where they are and communicate the way they want to communicate. We can't say, oh, because we're making the game, you should talk like this. And it's definitely a challenge, actually, we're like facing with Netflix, because a lot of that community building has been done around the content side, which is a very different style of engagement and communication, you know, or even like sort of player support level of that than it would be with a game. For, you know, for example, if you have an issue with the Netflix login, you can probably do that over a quick chat. That's probably how you prefer. But if you're not getting your tokens in a game, it's not going to be a quick, like, hey, let me reset your password for you kind of thing. It's like, hey, when you dig into that, it's going to be a couple days of back and forth and figure out what missions they completed. So I think it's really dependent on sort of that level of depth. But, I mean, I think over time, Netflix will figure it out because we are everywhere and we do a lot of languages. So we do want to meet them where they are.
I totally agree with Margaret's point about like meeting your players on their level and like kind of fostering that environment where they want to congregate. Like I'm a big fan of Reddit, and I really enjoy like browsing the subreddits for the games that I'm playing. But for games that are like hyper casual, there's not really a point. I've always found that like for Reddit, it's for those like more tactical games where there's some more like strategic depth. Discord now is for those like really core engaged players who really care about the communities and want to meet other people who play the game. So like kind of understanding where those demographics and where those different psychographics tend to congregate is, I think, really important to know as a community builder.
Yeah, for us, Discord is probably the biggest reason for the game's success, because we created the Discord when we were in alpha, and we began doing very small tests, and we'd have everyone in a voice channel, and there'd be like 20 people, 30 people chatting, and so we could get direct feedback from the players while they were playing it. It also helped us grow a community because people would show up each week. We'd hold a play session leading all the way up to launch. And we built a little bot in the Discord that would give out keys, so there was kind of an incentive that you would come in, you get a alpha key or get a beta key, and be able to play the game before it launched. So that doing that for about 9 months before releasing, we managed to grow our Discord to around a little over 7,000 people, so that there wasn't nobody at launch that knew about the game, because we were a battle royale. We needed to fill out games that were 64 players at the same time, so it had that requirement of like doing all that work before you actually got to the launch. And then since launching the Discord, it's very true that Discords at different sizes are entirely different beasts. We were fortunate that it grew somewhat like gradually along with the game. So it was just a matter of continually adding more moderators, adding more community programs, adding more channels, and kind of navigating what the community was naturally doing and like growing with it to support that growth, because it can be very overwhelming, especially if you have a lot of people flow in at once.
And it's an area where I think that it takes a lot of constant review and investment from the studio to look at, and from publishers as well, because the world is not static, and things are really changing, and you have to continuously be looking at what the opportunities are. Like, not only what you're doing now, is it working, but everything's changing. Like, I just found out that, like on TikTok, I'm like using 5% of the facility of what is available to me there. It's like, okay, I didn't know I could do all that stuff. Wow, that's really cool. Okay, I didn't know that last month. Now I know it. Now, what do I do with that? And it's going to totally change, because who's going to go faster at that, me or my community? It's probably my community. They're going to go to wherever they find that new thing for engagement. And so we're running. Like, to think that we're leading, I think is maybe a pretty bold assumption. I think we have to be looking at the community and where the community is pushing us, and they're the ones who are going to probably pick up on a lot of that functionality and joy, I guess I would call it, in a way. And so it's a constant investment. And so it's not like you're going to get to a certain point and you're done. It's like, keep working at it.
And are user reviews in any way for any of you like relevant for community building as well? So like reviews on like Steam page or the App Store page or anything?
Super, yeah. Yeah, reviews are super crucial to ForeVR Games. I think that most game publishing platforms, the reviews are super crucial in how your game does in the algorithms, affecting the number of your organic users. So responding to those and being sure to follow up with the players who leave bad reviews or who have issues is super crucial, I think, to try to get them to come back and foster that goodwill and to be able to get them to change those reviews, hopefully.
Oh, okay. So I think reviews as a possible business opportunity, or reviews as a possible business idea is probably the next big thing after the digital first businesses. Reviews and paying heed to those reviews and actioning on them in the right way at scale is probably one of the most underrated things that brands ignore today.
I really agree, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, holistically speaking, if you see, since COVID happened, there was a surge in digital first businesses. People started a lot of websites, apps. Now is the time they've started collecting. They've scaled up, businesses which were to die, they died, but the ones who are going to scale up are going to do well, going to collect a lot of reviews. the big question is, what do you do with those reviews? What do you do with that feedback? How do you action that in the right direction? I mean, that holds true for, I'm guessing, the gaming industry as well. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I think reviews are very, very important. They always have been. We try to respond to them within 24 to 48 hours. Our 48 hours are SOW. The interesting thing about reviews, which I think I find in talking with a lot of developers that they neglect, is the obvious thing that the platform looks at your reviews and they look at your scores. And so if you're looking for support from your platforms, and you don't care about your reviews, well, you just kind of sunk your boat. So being able to take care of that is really important as well. There's not just one audience for reviews. There's your players, which are ultimate priority, but you have to be building your network with a number of audiences out there, not just your player audience, and your partner audience is really important, and that's you gotta take care of your customer.
Yeah, I'll add to that is that, I do think reviews are very important. I think they often can be, moments where maybe you've made a decision or choice, importing something over or bringing something to a platform that maybe wasn't necessarily what the community wanted, and it can be a very clear indicator. It's numerical, it's right there on the page, and you should follow up with them, and you should be responding to them, because those do influence all the people who aren't speaking. And I think that's one of the things that with a lot of these different platforms, especially with reviews, actually, that one review actually represents a much larger point of view. And so, yes, we want to not be overly influenced by the vocal minority. You should always back up, like, oh, we see this in the review, let's go look at the data, let's go take an understanding of what actually is going on and what people are actually doing in their behavior and what they're saying in surveys, etc. But it is like a popular term, a canary in the coal mine. If you have a ton of one-star reviews for whatever reason, that represents actually thousands and thousands of other people who either are having the same problem or are seeing that same problem and maybe deciding not to play your game. So I think, yes, they're very influential. I think, if you're trying to make a game that people want to come back to and love, it's something I do look at it as when I look at signing games, past reviews for their other games as well. Just because the game is old doesn't mean you shouldn't care for it and love it and maintain it. If you have a foster that community is still there, if you're diehard fans, and that does actually influence, publishers looking at your next game.
Yeah.
To Margaret's point, a rule of thumb that I've learned in my years is that for every one person who writes in with a review or a ticket saying that they're having this issue, there's probably like 50 other people who've had the same thing and who don't write in. They don't bother to put in that effort and energy, and instead they just churn. So it's really important to take that feedback and take action on it.
So true. And we start out every stand-up with our community team reading out a player review. That's how we start our stand-ups, because we want to hear from our players. That's the voice that we need to hear. And not only, I think on our games, we have a few million different reviews that have been given. And so you learn a lot about your game on that aspect, but look at it for other reasons. I mean, the best marketing fodder we have is players and what they say about the game, and what they come up with themes that we could never creatively think of. And so there's so many reasons to go to your reviews and keep that relationship alive. It's just so important. It feeds a lot of parts of your company.
Yeah. Right. Let's dive into a little bit more into the more difficult side of community management. How do you react to attacks, aggression, or non-constructive feedback? Do you ignore it? Do you start a discussion? How do you handle it?
Working on League of Legends and Valorant, I've never had negative feedback, so I cannot respond. No, of course you have negative feedback. I've had every one of the things I've ever released is big shit on. Besides taking a deep breath and remembering it is a vocal minority, not everyone in the world all of a sudden hates the thing I put my love into. I think one of the things with it is I default to transparency and honesty. And Riot always supported this, Netflix supports this to an amazing degree, where I've been pretty straightforward. I'm like, here's the information I had in front of me and the constraints I had in front of me. And with that and all the things that, all the things I can share, of course, with all that information. Here's the decision I made. If you have a better one that solves the problems, please give it to me. Like, I'm trying to make the best decision possible. I'm going to be wrong, going to make mistakes. If you have a great idea that I didn't think of, that would be awesome. But also, if I am wrong and make mistakes, and that is what's coming out in the conversation, I'm fine changing it. Like, I'm going to be wrong, and part of when you make these decisions is understanding that you might have to go back and redo it. So that's how I usually just approach it, understanding that, like, I'm not going to please all 100 million league players. That sounds crazy. So putting out the information, saying, hey, this is what I did. Here's how I thought through it. It is what it is. I'm not going to be perfect. You know, I also will say, like, I do on those big games have to think about, you know, I have to remind myself to go look at the data of the players who aren't saying things, because I think we talked about bad reviews, things like that. For every one person who has a bad review, there's maybe 1,000 who are also feeling it. For every one good review, there's like 1 million people who are having that good time. I think it's like so much larger on the other side. And so I think it's one of the things I have to remind myself when I see these like sort of things come in that can be very hateful, to go look at like what players are enjoying and how they are using it and talking to them, because you do actually get to hear a lot of positive. And so you want to make sure that you see the whole picture when you're making those decisions to go back and do a feature or something.
Exactly. Don't forget the happy silent majority.
Yeah, we are trying to make fun most of the time.
Personally, I'm a fan of zero tolerance for abuse towards representatives of games. I've actually had this talk with my boss, and we agreed that every person who works in a player-facing support role should be entitled to free therapy under their benefits. People suck, and I think that not enabling that is a good thing to do for the health of your employees. Write that into your terms of service, you know, like no abuse. I get it if you write like a strongly worded email, but there's a limit, and you should set that boundary very strictly.
Yeah, definitely completely agree with that. And then one way that we try to go one step beyond with it, like definitely dealing with each of those situations as they arise, but then we also try to help reinforce positive norms in the community. So constructive feedback, not making it personal, like feel free to give as much negative feedback as possible, because that's actually helpful for us. That's like, we all want to make the game better, the community wants to make the game better. So we reinforce that ourselves, and then we also have community roles in our Discord where we recognize players that do a really good job of that, so that they can be role models for the rest of the community, so that people have a sense of like, what is the right behavior, what's the best, most effective way to provide this feedback. Because if you provide it that way, you're even more likely to see it actually come to life in the game.
Carolyn's so right, though, in the sense of you really have to, as a team, protect your people. That's so important, to protect your people who are dealing with this, because all you need to do is spend 15 minutes on the boards, and you're like, holy cow, there's some crap out here. And it can be really bad. It can be really bad, and most people don't see that during their day. And so be generous.
Yeah.
And I love the aspect of ingraining in your like team culture, or like reading, reading reviews that during stand-up. I think it's wonderful. Like, Netflix has such a strong stance on these things that we get to take, and we look for that in our partners, that they believe in those same things. Often something I always have to remind partners when they're pitching to include in the pitch, like that they do care about the community, and like, who are you?
Details.
Yeah, those things. But yeah, it's one of those things where like ingraining it in your game, into your culture, into like what is good look like setting that up is really important, because I think those are the things where we actually can not just stop the bad and like protect our people, but also protect the other players by pushing what's good. Because I think we model it by highlighting great players, or by not taking taking a stance of zero tolerance. That actually also helps influence it to protect our players. I think we're protecting our team, but we're also actually protecting our community.
Yeah, and not to let a negative environment linger too long, right? Yeah.
And your community starts to go with you if you have that sense of strength and you move forward. Some of our strongest advocates sometimes in those bad situations can be other players who are like, oh no, you crossed the line here. You're like in a Discord or something like that. It's like, no, it builds the culture of what is an acceptable behavior, and you got to support that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like Margaret already highlighted, I think openness also from the dev team really helps with that to sort of, cultivate that. We have a few minutes left on this panel, so if there's any questions from the audience, raise your hand. And otherwise, I'd be happy to continue asking a few more questions. Can I borrow your microphone? Thank you. Thank you.
So related to that last point, so in your teams, and Michael, I already know your answer to this, so you can tell everyone else. Do you encourage members of your team to get involved with the community, even if they aren't community managers? Do you encourage people to get involved or not, and why? What's your thinking behind that?
Yes, we're all game makers. Everyone on Valorant, everyone who works on League, everyone who works at Riot, even not on a game, is encouraged because you're doing something you love. You put your passion and your effort into this thing. You should definitely be engaging with the community, not just as an encouragement, but as a big push, because it connects you with the joy we bring, which is very fueling for a lot of people, but it also connects you with the community. You hear directly from them, and that is just, there's no amount of summary in a Tableau version that I can summarize what the community is feeling. Talking to someone and answering a ticket or something just is a real, true personal connection, and you can help them change their lives and hear from them, and it just can't be summarized, I guess. So yeah, definitely encourage it. That being said, it's scary. It's really scary. So buddying up and learning from community managers who do this, and having that partnership where they can have a safe space to write the post and then get someone to come read it and just be hey, help me out. I put my foot in my mouth. I don't want to say anything weird, And so I think that support is needed to do it. But if you do commit to that, it is awesome.
I agree totally. It's such a rewarding experience as game developers to be able to interact with the community that you fostered. But to that point, I think there is the caveat that if you are not in a public-facing position, if you're not in media or community, we tell our non-community employees that you should be careful about what you say publicly. Just treat it as if it's going to be quoted in an article. And we also tell them that if someone asks you for a quote specifically, or for something for press, direct them to the proper channels. For, I don't know, a community email or something like that, or to the PR representatives at the company.
Yeah, I think this is just a personal journey, but one thing that I've learned is that people who are dealing in our community management team with the community, they're much better at it than I am. So they're really pros. They're really, really good. But when we started as a studio 10 years ago, it was a real joy to get up and just read the reviews and read what comments were people, and that was just because it was just so much fun. You wanted to get it, you're at the giddy. And then honestly, I kind of waned away from that, and I started kind of getting busy in the business and doing a number of different things, and there's pros that are dealing with it, so I'm okay. And I got away from it a bit. And then one day I was just watching an interview with Tim Cook, who runs this little company called Apple, and it's tell us how your day goes. And he's well, I start my day by getting up and reading customer reviews. And I'm man, 2x4 to the side of the head. Yeah, it doesn't matter how big you get in a company, you still got to go back and you got to look at what your customers are saying. And so the customer reviews, so it's a habit for me now. I have it on my calendar, then I look at customer reviews. It's not on my daily calendar, I'll be honest, but it's on my weekly calendar to go back and look at the reviews and go through it. And if I'm sitting in an airport or something like that and I'm scrolling through my phone, you'll often see that I'm scrolling through customer reviews or looking at things. So I don't care where you are in the organization. I think you need to know what your customers are saying about your product.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do a really great job of building a good community unless you're part of the community, and so and it's also very rewarding if you're doing a great job of building a fun place to hang out and making friends. Then so we've even hired a lot of people from the community too, because they're people who are really passionate about the game and understand the world. So yeah, totally agree with everyone. Okay.
Awesome. I thought it would be fun to close it out with maybe you can share an anecdote or something that you really learned from the community and the value that the community brought to you. I'll give you back your microphone. So, anything that comes to mind to anyone?
I don't know about something that we learned from the community. There's so much. It's just constantly game balancing and different features we're adding to the game. But one of the more fun things that we've done too is weaving some of the creative things from the community into the game. So we had our whole backstory. We thought probably the animals would be likely to start up their own cult. And one of our community members started saying praise banana all the time, and it kind of started spreading through the community because we have banana weapons that you can slip each other on. And so we sort of weaved that into the story of the game where there was this banana cult and there's a secret mountain shrine that you can find a cave and place a banana on the thing and it starts playing like banana chanting music. So we really like adding that type of thing. And we did something similar with when we were getting a lot of really great fan art. We wanted a way to kind of showcase that, so we built a museum in the game where you can walk through the museum and see the latest fan art winners that have been put up on walls.
I mean, on that sort of thread, of course, the pretty obvious one for League of Legends is the game mode of ARAM was created by the community, and them literally just playing that mode. And then, I was there when they turned it into a real mode, which is still beloved by many, and for many a main way they play League of Legends. So I think things like that are great. If you are connected to the community, you can see it and actually bring features into the game. I think for me, in terms of personally, what I've learned from the community, I think I feel like I've been doing it a while, and so I feel like my view of the community has definitely changed over time from being a fan of certain games to working on sort of that side of it to, just seeing the communities grow and change over time. I think one of the biggest things I learned is to remember that there is we are trying to bring fun, and there is a lot of people who love the game, and though there's frustration, we've all played games where we're please don't let me fall through the world. And when I'm trying to ride my motorcycle piano, but at the same time, you're doing it because you love it, and there's a million people out there who also love it with you, and you forget that. At least I forget and sort of get blinded by the job and the work and trying to improve and trying to make it better. That I actually have this group of people who also want to just talk about the game I love. So even today somebody asked me what's your favorite character on Valorant? And I just immediately went into the well, I really like working on Sage, but he was really fun. The mechanic we built for the game. And I was like, oh, you mean as a human player? Yeah, I love playing Sage because I love effing people up. Let's go. I was like, oh yeah, you're with me on that. Let's go.
From a product perspective, very close to what I'm doing here at Moengage. So last 2 years, 45% of the product enhancements that were developed by the team were actually based off of the suggestions given by the actual customers. So feedback, community, the user advisory board kind of is the nucleus of whatever evolution that the product will see for the next 5 years. And from a product standpoint, this is what we want to kind of continue to do.
There's about 70 things that flashed in my mind when you asked the question, so I was trying to figure out what to say. But I think one of the things that was important from a higher level for us is that there's such a diversity in the community that there's a real strong core, and I underestimated how strong this is that how strong that your community wants you to be they want you to be good. In the sense of you're reflecting this is your promise, and there's something more to you than just what your game is. And so whether it's your social community, whether it's your brand image, whether it's how you're involved in the community or any of those type of things, there needs to be a consistency throughout your whole business, your whole life, your DNA, we say, of the company. That is so important, and to assume that your community doesn't care about that would be a mistake. I think it really kind of drives who you are as the people that are working together to build your games. So to think that we work over here and building everything, and our community's out there and playing everything, and they don't somehow interact. Our community taught us that no, that's not the case. The community really does care and wants to be a part of something of engagement with you. And if you can make that connection with them, you can go a long ways together. And I think that's kind of what gets us excited about what could happen in the next while.
I think that my biggest learning from my time in community has been really hammering in the importance of understanding your community and speaking on their level and really being like in the trenches of what they like and what they believe in. When I was at B-Side Games, I was really deeply involved in the go-to-market and community plans for the RuPaul's Drag Race Superstar game. And if you know anything about RuPaul's Drag Race, it is very heavily adored by the LGBTQ community. And so one of the biggest considerations that we had to take into account was how we were going to make sure that we did this community justice in terms of like how we spoke to them and what kind of language and messaging we used. And so what I really love about that team was that it was a team primarily made out of people who were involved, like people who are in the queer community and people who really understood drag and what that community likes and all the nuances of the community. The lead artist and the community engagement manager on that project were both like drag performers actively, which I think was super cool. And I think it was really important for me as well. And I think it was really rewarding too, like as a queer woman of color, to be able to be involved in this project and to really make sure that all the different identities of your players were accurately reflected within that game, and that you were able to approach everything like that sensitively and in a way that was fun for those players.
Well, I think that is a great place to end it. So thank you all so much, and give a warm applause to our panel. Right, that doesn't only end the growth track, that also ends the entire program for track room 2. Thank you all so much for coming in and listening. Thanks to all our amazing speakers. Thanks to our sponsors. And just so you know, there's already, the tickets for Pocket Gamer Helsinki are already on sale. So if you can't get enough of it, you know where to go. Thanks.